I'd like to introduce myself if I could. My name is Father Dan Hennessey, and I serve in the diocese as vocation director. And it's a real joy to be able to celebrate Mass here on Catholic TV. I'd like to put it in a little plug, if I could, for vocations, and ask everybody to please, everybody at home, to please be praying for vocations in the church, especially because we're here in Boston. I ask you to pray for priests and vocations, priestly vocations here in Boston. We just had the great grace of having 5 new men ordained to be transitional deacons about a week and a half ago, and we thank God for that. And those 5 men will be, God willing, ordained to be priests this May. Today, the gospel gives us the gospel that the church gives for our reflection today, I should say, is the Sabbath Controversy, where the Pharisees are accusing Jesus of breaking the Sabbath. And of course, the Lord says at the end of the gospel, that is why the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath, because the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And so I'd like to invite you today to reflect for a moment or two about the Sabbath, that the Sabbath, the day of rest, is just that. It's a gift from the Lord, and it's a day for us to enjoy God's gift of rest and to enjoy being with God in a very intentional way. The Sabbath is a day, is a gift from God, really for many reasons, but one of the reasons is because it's a day of worship, that the day to worship God, even the opportunity to worship God is a gift from the Lord, that the Lord, it's a mysterious thing, I suppose, that the Lord gives us the gift of worshiping Him. Just the very fact that we're able to worship God is a gift from God. More so than an obligation, it's a gift from the Lord. And to rest in God, to just be with God, to remain with God, is a gift as well. And we could think of it maybe as when we're with a friend, that, somebody that we're close with, maybe somebody that you're with right now at home, sitting there with somebody at home right now, that very often we can think that we have to say too much or say even anything. But when we're with a friend, when we remain with somebody, when we rest with somebody, so to speak, we're just with them. And we enjoy their company, not because of something that they're doing or saying, but simply because we're just with that person. I like to look at Sunday as a day of rest in that sense, that it's a day, one day of the week where we can take the time and place away to be with the Lord, to just rest with Him. In the Old Testament, the Sabbath, we read about the Sabbath in the Old Testament, that God says that the Sabbath is holy. He says that we should keep the Sabbath holy because it is holy to the Lord, that we want to do what God asks of us, to keep it holy to the Lord. The Sabbath, of course, commemorates the creation of God, that on the 7th day that the Lord rested after all that He had made, that it was good, and that the Lord then rested on that day. The Sabbath is also, in the Old Testament, a memorial day to memorialize the day that the people of God, the holy people of God, escaped Egypt when they went out of the place of slavery and towards the promised land. And so the Sabbath commemorates that. We know, of course, as Christians, that Sunday is the new Sabbath, if you will, that it's a day where we memorialize, we remember that God saved us through Jesus, and that the Lord, that by His death and resurrection, that He saved us. And we memorialize that, we celebrate that, of course, on Sunday. I'd like to ask you to consider, what's your disposition towards Sunday as a day of rest? You know, when I was a little kid, I remember everything shut down on Sunday because Sunday in the culture was a day of rest. It's not like that anymore now. Very often I'll drive out to a parish to celebrate Mass in the morning, to speak about vocations on a Sunday morning. I'll drive by a supermarket at 8 o'clock in the morning and it's open and the parking lot's full with cars. We don't live in the same culture where we consider Sunday the day of rest that many of us always did. So what is our disposition towards the day of rest, towards Sunday as a day of rest? Do we look at it as just that, as a day of rest, or do we look at it just simply as a day to get ready for the rest of the week because life might seem so busy? Do we look at it as a day to reflect upon God and His gifts, to rest with the Lord, to be with the Lord? Do we look at it as a day to say, yes, I have set aside time for God? And don't say, oh, I don't have enough time, because when we give the first thing to God, God always gives us enough of what we need. We know that. Mother Teresa, for example, she used to say that her sisters, if they were busy, then they would definitely need to do a holy hour, and if they were very busy, they would need to do 2 holy hours. Because we rest in the Lord more, the more we rest in the Lord, the more we actually end up getting done. Well, so Sunday is a day of rest, but each day we should take as some time of rest, to rest in the Lord in daily prayer. Even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes that we have in our busy lives, if we take some time to rest in the Lord rejuvenates us and He renews us. St. Augustine said, "Our hearts are restless until they rest in Thee, O Lord." May it be the case that today we each rest in the Lord, and that each Sunday we make it a day where we rest in His love and in His peace.